Books, books. I like books. I'm gonna read them all.
Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my channel where I review fantasy, Stephen King, all sorts of books. And today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite books of 2023. I can't believe it's 2024. Wow, 2023 was a crazy year. I'll talk about that in a different video. So for now, I'll just say, hope you all had a great holiday and New Year's and spent time with your family, friends, and loved ones. If you saw my community post, I have been feeling a little under the weather. I'm getting better all the time, but if I sound a little sniffly or if I start coughing or lose my voice at all, that is why. So let's talk about 2023. 2023 was a great reading year. I actually had a really hard time narrowing down this list to just 10 books. So before I dive in, I do want to highlight some honorable mentions. These are all books that I enjoyed but didn't quite make my top 10. And those are going to be Wizard and Glass by Stephen King. Don't worry, I have another Stephen King book on my list. This is the fourth book in the Dark Tower series. I really enjoyed it, just not as much as the other Stephen King book that I picked. Together We Burn by Isabel Ibanez. This is probably, it's fallen out. This is probably my favorite Owl Crate book of the year that I've read. So this was a really fun YA fantasy. It's got dragons, romance, all that sort of stuff. Really enjoyed this one. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I really enjoyed this book a lot. The only reason it's not in my top 10 is because it didn't give me the emotional impact that some of these other books did, but I still really love this one, and R.F. Kuang is definitely one of my new favorite authors. She does challenging characters. She really makes you think about tough topics. Really love this one. And then last honorable mention is Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. This is Cassandra Clare's first adult fantasy, and I really loved it. I love the world building. I love the characters. Again, this one did not make my list though because it is not a complete story. It doesn't even end on a cliffhanger, it just ends. So this isn't even like book one in a series. I'd say it's part one, which really annoys me because other than that, I really liked this one. So now all the books that are on my top 10 really affected me emotionally in some way. I did rank them from 10 to number 1. The first 4 to 5 on the list gave me a like a verbal reaction, like a gasp or a oh my gosh, that type of thing. And then the top 5 to 6 actually gave me like a physical reaction. So without further ado, let's jump in with number 10, The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the fourth and final book in her Raven Boy series, and as a whole, I just really love this series. It's a YA/middle grade. It's kind of right on the line of YA middle grade. It's got, supernatural elements. It's got fantasy. It's got action. It's got adventure, romance. This series has it all. Not only that, but the characters are so deep and complex, and the story is so nuanced. But this book in particular, I think, really stands out because of the ending. It's really hard to end a series, especially this like a really epic fantasy like this series is. And this series has one of the most clever endings that I've ever read in like any series ever. I did a whole review on it, and I will link my full reviews for all of these books in the description box. So if you want to find out more, go watch it. But this one definitely was an amazing read and deserves a spot on this list. Number 9 is going to be Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. I am not always the biggest Sarah J. Maas fan, but I have been loving Throne of Glass. This is her YA fantasy series. It's epic. It's, again, all the things I said about the Raven Boys, but like even more so. There's so much stuff going on, and this is my favorite book of the series so far. This is the fourth one. And again, the ending of this book, like, totally changes the whole series. It changes characters, it changes the world, it changes your conception on who is good and evil, who the big bad really is. Like, it just changes so much stuff, and I think it was so well done and like so epic that my eyes were like bugging out of my head as I got to the end of this one. This series has been a delight, and this book in particular was just so good. My 8th favorite book of 2023 is The Hunger of the Gods by Gwynne. I did a buddy read with David over at David's Book Reviews earlier this year. I really loved the first book in this series, and then the sequel I loved. I don't even know if I can say I loved it more because I think it's been a while since I've read the first one, but I really loved the sequel. I mean, first of all, it's got these amazing, like, animal gods in it. There's a giant dragon, there's a giant wolf, there's all these crazy gods, but it's the human characters that really make this story something special. And my favorite human character, one of my favorite female characters of all time, is Orca. Orca is like if you were to look up like mama bear in a dictionary, you would see Orca's picture. Like, Orca is just the epitome of a mother who will do anything to protect her family. In this story, specifically her son. But not only that, but she is actually a legit warrior. She is a legit fighter. And man, she is just one of my favorite female characters of all time, Orca. She is just a total badass, and I love her. Number 7 is going to be Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I was a huge fan of Ninth House, and this is one of my most anticipated sequels of 2023, and it did not disappoint. Again, this is an adult series by Leigh Bardugo. She's mostly known for her YA, the Grishaverse books, but I've been loving this adult series from her, really, really loving it. Again, I think it's one of those series that's not for everyone because it is super dark. But if you are someone that likes dark fantasy, this will be up your alley because the characters in this book, literally travel to the depths of hell to try and, save one of their friends, one of their comrades, and it's just wild. And I love a good female character, and Alex Galaxy Stern is an amazing female character because the female characters that I love aren't perfect. They have flaws and they struggle, and that is definitely Alex. She has a lot of flaws, but even with her flaws, she still wants to do the right thing. She's still a good person on the inside despite everything that's happened to her, and I'm just really loving her story. Now, I will say that this one could have been higher, but it's very clear that this is not going to be the end of her story. This is a complete story, it is a complete book, but it's clear that there is going to be more, and I can't wait for that to happen. Number 6 is going to be Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. I just reviewed this one recently, so most of you probably already know how I feel about this one. This is one of the best sequels I think I've ever read. It's epic on so many levels. But there were multiple times in this book that made me gasp out loud. And not all of them were these big, battle scenes. Sure, some of them were. But there are some character moments in here that actually made me gasp out loud. Some character moments where characters are really on this emotional journey and characters have this really personal growth that's really on such a deep level that it was just brilliant. And I love that stuff. I love when a character kind of has a come to Jesus moment, if you will, and that is definitely in here. That's why this book is so high up on my list. This book has cemented me as a Brandon Sanderson fan. It cemented me as a fan of the Stormlight Archive, and it has cemented the fact that I will continue to be reading these books. My 5th favorite book of 2023 is Babel by R.F. Kuang. Now again, I know that this book is not for everyone. This is a difficult book. It's got unlikable characters. It's quite slow in the beginning. It's got some really challenging, tough questions in here. But this book just blew my mind. I love a challenge, and this book gave it to me. I went on such an emotional roller coaster with this book. I went from loving it to hating it to loving it to absolutely being blown away. And this book has one of the best final lines I've ever read in a book ever. This book made me Google about like real life world history, specifically Haitian history. This book made me want to learn more about history. Like, this book had such an impact on me, such an effect on me, not just like reading it, but actually in my life, that it's just crazy. It's crazy when a book can do that for you. And again, I know it's not for everyone, but man, I really love this one. So now we're getting down to my top 4, and all 4 of these books made me cry in different ways. I'm not a big crier, like I'm not an emotional reader, but every once in a while a book just gets me. And these books got me. So that's the reason that they are at the top. They're the top of the top because they got an emotional response from me, which is very rare. So number 4 is going to be Britt-Marie Was Here by Fredrick Backman. If you've been around for a while, some of you may remember that A Man Called Ove was my favorite book last year because that book had such an emotional impact on me. This book is very similar in a certain way because we have an older woman. She's kind of alone. She's not like as crotchety and ornery as Uve was. She's just very set in her ways and very particular and doesn't know how to connect with people. So the emotional journey that she takes in this book is both, it's heartwarming, it's beautiful, and there is something that happens near the end of the book that literally drove me to tears. I don't want to give it away and say what it was, but this book is beautiful on so many levels. It's really heartwarming, and yeah, if you're looking for something that's like an uplifting, emotional read, maybe you want a good cry, Britt-Marie Was Here is definitely something you should check out. My third pick of 2023 is The Green Mile by Stephen King. Yes, hands down, this is the best Stephen King book that I have read this year, and it's one of my all-time favorites. It's gonna become one of my all-time favorites. This is the type of book that even if you're not a Stephen King fan, even if you're not a horror fan, like anyone can read this book. Anyone can read this book. It's about a black man, John Coffey, who is accused of killing these little white girls, and he gets put on death row. Enter an officer here. He gets to know John, and he starts to realize that even though he's this big, scary guy, like, that's not who he is on the inside. And yes, this book does have horrifying elements to it, but it's not like, it's not like Pennywise the Clown where there's like an evil demon going around. The horrors in here are more like the horrors of what humans do to each other, how humans treat each other, the horrors of how prejudice and racism can impact people's lives, innocent people's lives. And yeah, there is a horrifying scene in here that involves an electric chair, but the thing that gets me emotional about this book is the characters. The characters, their development, their journeys. It's beautiful, it's sad, it's horrifying, it's so many different things. If you've seen the movie, the book is even better. So again, if you already know the story going in, you'll know that you will cry. I cried not once, but twice at this book. I never thought I'd cry over a rat, but this book made me cry over a rat. My second favorite book of 2023 is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Yes, Leigh Bardugo is on here twice, which I didn't realize until right before I made this video. But I mean, I absolutely loved Six of Crows. If you've read Six of Crows, I don't need to say why. I mean, this is like one of the best YA fantasies I've ever read in my entire life. I know a few years ago I did like a favorite YA fantasy series. I'm gonna have to redo it now because this one deserves a spot on it. At the base, it's like a real simple story about a magical heist, but what makes this book really special are the characters. There are so many amazing characters in here, and the characters, their relationships with each other, the way they interact with each other, there's like a will they, won't they between a couple of the different characters. Like, it's just so good, and the characters are just so good. I am a character-driven reader, and the characters in here are just, they're just so good. And there are so many things to get emotional with in this book. So many different things. So many different storylines. Like, I could gush about it all day. I'm not going to, but yeah, Six of Crows, absolutely loved it. And then finally, that brings me to my number one favorite book of 2023, another book that made me cry multiple times reading it, and that's going to be Winter of the Witch by Katherine Arden. This is the third and final book in her Winter Night trilogy, and yeah, I cannot remember the last time like a high fantasy made me so emotional, not just once but twice. I cried in the beginning of the book when something sad happened, but then I cried even harder at the end of the book when something happy happened. So the fact that this book got me emotional because of something like happy and something good just goes to show like how well this series is written, because you're so emotionally invested in the characters that their success and their joys like really impact you. And I can't remember the last time a book has made me cry over something like that. All the other books that I just talked about, have made me emotional, mostly for sad reasons. And again, in the beginning, I got emotional over something sad. But something happens at the end of the book that is so like awe-inspiring and so happy and so joyful that like it made me cry even harder. And because I'm sick right now and very tired and emotional, even thinking about it is making me want to cry right now. Am I the only person who gets like easily emotional when they're not feeling well? Let me know in the comments section below. So there you have it. Those are all my favorite books of 2023, some honorable mentions. I'm not going to have any of the ferrets today because I don't want to infect them with my saliva and my cootie breath, but I'm sure they'll be in future videos. I definitely want to talk more about my plans for 2024. I have a couple ideas and will definitely be asking you guys for some of your ideas, but until then, I will just say here's to a new year of reading. So now I want to know from you, what were your favorite books of 2023? Have you read any of the ones that I've mentioned? Did you dislike any of the ones I mentioned? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below, and as always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff coming your way. All right, everyone, happy reading.